Hello and welcome back to the Littlest Sewing Room. Today I'm going to be showing you how to thread the Singer 460K. So obviously I have a 460K 75. There are variations of 460K. I think there's a 460-15, that sort of thing. It's also very similar to the Singer 260K. So if you've got any one of these machines, the thread pattern or threading pattern should be very similar. So in order to thread this machine, there's some simple items that we're going to need. A spanner, a pair of tweezers, possibly a screwdriver, and an implement for threading. So this is a threader that I've got for my chain stitch embroidery machine. Your other option, if you don't have access to something like that, is literally just a piece of twisted copper wire, just so you can feed it through some of the more awkward places. So in order to get this machine ready for threading, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this side door. Some just swing open. In this case, with this particular machine, I can remove it. And I'm also going to take off this front plate here. So in order to do that, we loosen this off here. And then there's a bolt at the bottom. This is when you may need your spanner or your screwdriver. There we go, and we take that plate off there. So the first thread I'm going to do is the thread that will run through the needle. So I have to lift this flap here, and I need to make sure my needle is at the highest point. The next thing, the first part of the threading process, is we need to get our thread around this tension unit here. So you can see there's a hole at the back of the tension unit. We need to pass our thread through the hole, like so, and we need to make sure our thread is going to sit within the tension discs, like so. Let me just move this down a little bit for you so you can see just a little bit better. Can you see the thread is now between the tension discs? So the next thing we do is we hook our thread onto our threading tool, and we carefully pull this back through the machine, like so. Yeah, can you see now you've got your thread running through this area of the machine and through these holes here. So the next path this thread takes is it goes through the bottom hole on here, and then it will thread through your needle eye. So sometimes it's easier to do this by hand, or sometimes you might want to use your threading tool. I'm going to just put my threading tool through, try and hook my thread on. It can be a little bit fiddly, and just pull my thread through there, like so. And then I'm going to pass the end of this thread through the needle eye, like so. That's your needle threaded. Now we need to go on to threading the loopers. So next we're going to be threading our right looper. Now the path through the tension discs can be a little bit fiddly to get, okay? So we place our thread, in this case I am using a pink thread so you can see it better, through the little hole at the top of the tension disc, and then we need to hook this under here, can you see? And at the bottom of this hook there is a little groove, and we need to get that thread into the little groove, and then it will pass through the tension discs and come down like this. So now we've got the thread through the tension discs nicely. We now need to thread this area of the machine here. On this machine there's little red dots. You'll find a lot of vintage machines that don't have this paint on. This is something the previous owner has done. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to pass the thread through this piece here, through this small hole here. Now the next one can be particularly fiddly, so I'm going to use my little bit of copper wire, because what I've got to do is you've got to thread through a hole that's down here, like so. So what I do is I get my copper wire. You can't use your stiff threader in this area because you need it to be able to bend. So you get your bit of copper wire, hook your thread into your copper wire and pull it through, like so. So we're all the way through, and then leaving your thread in the copper wire, bring it back and pass your thread under this hook here. Now this hook has a metal bar that goes through it across the bottom. Okay, so you can't just loop the wire around. You literally have to pass the thread round the back of the bar. Okay, so it comes through like that. You see the path now? So it's come down. It shouldn't be that side of that hook. There you go. Let me just unhook it from there. So it's come down. It's gone through the hole in this bottom piece. So you've got one here, a hole here, through the back of this bar. So it loops into this bar. And the next area we need to thread is just here. So I don't know how well you can see, but this piece here has two holes. We need to pass this thread through the hole that is to the back. And then this is where you might need your tweezers to grab it and pull it through, like so. Again, it's got caught up on that bar. You do have to be careful you don't get your thread wrapped around that bar. And then the next place we need to send our thread is through this little piece of tubing here. Difficult to see, but this tube runs up the back of here, and then it comes out just behind this piece here. Yeah, so you'll see that there is a tube going up. If you look on your machine and look really carefully, there's a tube that comes up, and then the top is just there, and you've got to put the thread up this tube to the top. So I'm just going to feed that through. You can see it pop out the top. And then this is where your tweezers come to play again. Okay, so you go in with your tweezers and you will grab your wire and your thread and then pull it through. I'm trying to do this without moving you too much so you can see. So can you see? That's where the wire and the thread is that's pulling through. Okay, so we pull it all the way through, and then we've threaded the path up here. You've got your blades here, so we need to feed this behind the back of your cutting blades, like so, and then in front of your needle. And if you can see here, this is your looper, so you then need to send that thread through your looper. Okay, again, I'm going to use a little bit of wire just because it's what I've got my thread currently attached to. It can be quite fiddly. It's quite a small hole. There we go. Again, you could use your tweezers if you wanted to, but then that is our left looper threaded. So as you can see, the path runs round the tension discs, down through the holes here, up the back. Let me just check that's not got twisted. Sometimes you will find that your thread will form loops. Just double check that your path is nice and clear for your thread and that it is moving freely through the path. So then it goes up the little tube here, and it comes out the top, which is just hidden behind this plate here. Okay, you have to reach in with your tweezers and pull your thread through, feed it round the back of your cutting blades, and then through your looper just here. So the next thing I need to do is I need to thread my left looper, but before I do that, I need to put the plate that was here back on. So next we're going to thread this left looper here. So in this case I'm doing it with blue thread again so you can see it better. So as before, we go through the hole on the back of our tension unit like this, and grab it, hook it around the little loop piece until it goes into the notch like so, and then bring it down and across our tension discs. Make sure that's going in there nicely. Here we go. Yeah, so the thread is sat nicely within the tension disc. So the threading path for this looper is a little bit simpler, but it gets fiddlier towards the end. So we send it through this hole here, okay, pull it down. So then our thread is running straight down through the hole. There is a hole on the bottom of this bar here. We thread it through that bar, and then we thread it through this piece. So here it takes the same track as the pink thread. Okay, so it goes between the bar that runs across at the bottom and the bar that runs across the top. We take it through. I'm going to get my tweezers so I can pull it through easier for you. You can see better, like that. And then the next thing we do is this thread will go through the front hole on this bar here. So you've got your pink in the back, the blue is going into the front. I'm going to pull that through and being a bit bestie, like so. Make sure it isn't looping around and catching on any of the other pieces. You can see it started to form a loop there. So we've got a nice even thread path all the way through here, and then we need to pass the thread through this piece here as well. Okay. I'm just going to trim that fluffy end off the thread so it's easier to thread everything. So next we've got to pass our thread through this piece here. Okay. Again, this is where your tweezers can come in handy. And you just grab it, pull it through. Again, I'm going to just unhook that off there. Yeah. So this is your thread path for this area of the machine. So it comes down off the tension disc through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes. Okay. Now we need to pass the thread through this tube that's on this plate here. Okay, this guard here. That's why we have to put the guard back on after doing our previous looper. So I'm just going to put my threading device through and hook my thread on, hopefully, and then just pull my thread through like that. This is the area where everything can get really fiddly, because what we have to do is we have to send our thread through this tunnel here, this hole here, and then there's a piece at the back the thread has to go through to then fasten into the looper. Okay. If you look at the back here, you see here, this is where our tunnel will come through. But then this here is our looper. Okay. And the looper has a tiny little hole at the end that we need to get our thread through. It can be quite fiddly doing this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my little bit of wire. And I'm going to push the thread through the hole first. Okay, till it's about ready to pop out the other side. So what I've done is I've actually moved my looper up out the way because I found this method works better. And I will pull my wire and thread through carefully from the other side. Okay, and grab it with my tweezers. And then I'm going to bring my looper back, and then I'm going to thread the looper separately. Okay, ideally what you want to be able to do is push the wire all the way through into the looper and out the other side. I've found actually trying to achieve that, to line up the looper hole with the hole where this thread comes through is practically impossible. You could try coming from this side and then hooking your thread through if you want to, because obviously you've got to line up your looper and then get your threader in through the eye of your looper and then through that little hole there. It can be quite difficult. So I found that this method works quite well. So what I will do now is I get my little piece of wire. I will feed it through the eye on the looper, which I may do off camera because it can be very fiddly. And I use my tweezers just to pull the wire back through this way. Can you see what I've done? I used my tweezers. I got the end of the wire just through the looper and then I've pulled it this way. I've opened the wire up. I'm going to put the thread through the wire. Okay, like so. It's a bit fiddly. Squeeze this wire back together because we want the wire to pull the thread through the looper, and then I will very carefully pull the wire. Let me move these threads out of the way, they're getting all tangled up, plus the thread back through the looper. It's been a bit temperamental, but there we are. And that There's all the looper threaded. As I say, this is the bit that gets really fiddly with these machines, is when you're threading the bottom looper. Just be patient. You will get there, you know. Just give it a bit of time. And then we just move our threads out of the way and we can put all these bits back onto the machine. One thing to make a note of is before I've put this plate back on, the big one, let me just zoom you out a little bit. Okay, before I put this main feed plate back on, I've lifted the looper with the blue thread in to the back, and then I've just pulled it forwards so it's in line with all the other threads. So now I've got the machine all back together. I've put the presser foot back in place. I'm just going to do a thread test with it and see how it's stitching and cutting. As I say, I bought this machine for spares, but it turned out to be in a better condition than mine. So I've fixed it, fixed the problem that was wrong with it, and I've swapped it over. So let's just see how she's stitching. All the way to the end. Oh wow. Okay. So if you look at the first part of this, it does stitch really nicely. It's actually got a different eccentric ring into my old one, so it is more like a badge edger. There are a few issues with the tension, just the nature of the thread and the fabrics I'm sewing. So I'll have a little play with those, get that fixed up. But yeah, job's a good one. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.